Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Introspection is a way to know oneself. A very exuberant welcome to everyone present in this meeting today. I extend fond greetings to you all on the behalf of the Department of Political Science, Sri Venkateswara College. Cultivation of mind should be the ultimate aim of human existence, and one's belief should lie not in fate but his strength, said Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. A very happy Ambedkar Jayanti to one and all. We are on day 2 of our annual department festival, Introspect. It is a great honor for me to be hosting today. I am Jaita Pal, Social Media Executive, Political Science Student Association. We are conducting a workshop today by Dr. Thongkholal Haokip, sir, on academic writing and publication. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Before we begin ahead with the workshop, I would urge Dr. Deepika Singh, ma'am, faculty of the Department of Political Science, to address the meeting and introduce Dr. Thongkholal Haokip, sir. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jaita, for giving me the honor to आप सभी को नमस्कार और अभिनंदन. Very warm greetings to one and all. Some technical problem, just give me 1 second kindly. आप सभी को नमस्कार और अभिनंदन. Very warm greetings to one and all. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, Sri Venkateswara College, University of Delhi, I welcome you all in this session on academic writing and publications. Academic writing is a tool. It is a tool for the communication of acquired knowledge in any specific field of study. Through academic writing, we identify the problem and solutions pertaining to any specific area. And further, by getting it published, we contribute in dissemination of knowledge and thereby contribute in nation building. Today, we are privileged to have an esteemed scholar, Dr. Thongkholal Haokip amidst us. He is a teaching faculty at the Center for Law and Governance, JNU, New Delhi. His journey as a teaching faculty started from St. Peter's College, Shillong, then Presidency University, Kolkata. Dr. Haokip is the editor of the Journal of Northeast India Studies. He is also the executive editor of Asian Ethnicity. Dr. Haokip has immense contributions through his academic writing in many of the leading newspapers, national and international journals on the issues of governance, ethnicity, ethnic relations, borderland security, India's Actist policies, and the Northeast. His work on the Anglo-Cookie War, the cookies of Northeast India, and India's cookies policy in the Northeast are some of his pioneering work. Today, we look forward for being enriched by Dr. Haokip's diverse experience and expertise on the academic writing and publications. Thank you. Over to you, Jaita.
Much obliged for your kind words, ma'am. Also, I would like to ask the audience to put any question that comes to their mind in the chat box. Welcome, sir. Yes, sir, you can unmute yourself and we can begin with the workshop session.
Okay, now, yes, you can hear me now. So I'm glad to be in this occasion talking something about academic writing and publication, which I've been engaged for the last more than 10 years now. I've been editing as well as writing and publishing in other journals and book publishers. So I will start with a discussion on why academic writing as well as critical thinking is important for India's future advancement into the 21st century. I prepared a slide which perhaps would be more clear to you if you could as well as see the slide. So I would share a slide. Okay, can you see the slide now?
No, sir.
Okay, yes. Is it visible now?
No, sir, it's still not visible.
Is it visible now?
No, sir. No, sir, it's not.
Okay, so we are very used to Google Talk, Google Meet. So perhaps there is a, I'll just have to adjust with this window from the screen. Yeah, is it coming? Yeah, do respond whether it's coming or not.
No, sir, it's not. So you can, I can send a mail ID on the chat box so that you can send a PPT there so that we can share the screen for you, if that's possible.
Okay, maybe perhaps I can. Is it coming now? Hmm. Perhaps the entire sharing entire screen would be so sorry. It seems like I have to grant. Anyway, we can just talk it. But if this, or later I can share it. Sure. If you look into the report of scientific papers published by, countries, for instance, in 2020, reputed indexer, that is Scopus, released the data. And in 2020, China publishes more than 7 lakh 44,042 scientific papers as per this data. And on the second is United States, for instance, they publish 6 lakh 24,544. And on the third is the United Kingdom, which publishes more than 1 lakh 98,000. And on the fourth is India, with more than a billion population. We have just 1 lakh 91,590 scientific papers published in journals indexed by Scopus. So despite our numerous population investment and others, we are still on the fourth behind United Kingdom. So that is why academic writing is very important, especially if you look into the new economic policy. For instance, if you look into the new economic policy on school education, you would find there is a mention of critical thinking 4 times in that document. In terms of reductions in curriculum, you'd find that the core essential has to be reduced, and it focuses on critical thinking, inquiry, and discovery. And the classes should be interactive with teachers, and the experience of learning should be joy, creative, and collaborative. So that's one of the criteria in new education policy 2022 on school education. And among the key principles of new education policy in 2022, you would find that critical thinking and creativity is one of the core components of the policy, even in schools. And also in terms of its objective of transforming curricular and pedagogical structure, particularly in the secondary stage. It aims for multidisciplinary study, greater critical thinking, flexibility, and student choice of subjects. So these are, if you look carefully into all these documents, which I have, just shown you. Sorry, I can't show you now. I have prepared a very nice slide, a very interesting slide, but perhaps I can share with you, and some of you can show us in the slide, right? Perhaps quickly, I would share this.
Hello, sir. I shared an email address with you. So could you please share the PPT on that?
Yeah. Can I send you in the email that you communicate to me?
Sure, sir. Work.
Yes, I'm sharing with you right now. Sorry, it's just okay. Yeah, I just sent you. Please check your email. I'm very sorry that I'm very used to Google Meet, that in JNU we are using mostly Google Meet in this type of talks and classroom teachings. So perhaps we are not very used to Zoom. Do you get it?
Yes, I'll just share my screen.
Okay. Perhaps I am not among the admin of this, maybe the co-host of this Zoom. So perhaps it doesn't permit me to share the slides. Perhaps that's what I got in some of the Zoom meetings. Yeah, if you put me in a co-host, then perhaps I can. Okay, yeah, now I can see it. So today's discussion is, as you see in the PPT, it's about academic writing and publication. And the next slide would show you the scientific papers that were produced in 2020, that is in all journals indexed by Scopus. And so what is this academic writing? Simply, academic writing is the formal writing style used in colleges and universities. It can be a term paper, it can be a dissertation, or it can be any other kind of documents. But in colleges and universities in the US or in the universities in India, we use term paper as well as dissertation for MPhil, master's, or doctoral dissertation thesis. So academic writing is clear, concise, focused, structured, and backed up by evidence. Its purpose is to aid the reader's understanding. So simply, it's a formal tone and style, but it's not complex and does not require the use of long sentences and complicated vocabulary. So this University of Leeds defined in simple way. So what are the characteristics of this academic writing? Academic writings are plan and focus, and it answers the questions and demonstrates an understanding of the subject. And all academic writings are structured. It is well coherent, written in a logical order, and brings together related points and materials. And it is evidence that demonstrates knowledge of the subject area, supports opinions and arguments with evidence, and is referenced accurately. So there is also a formal style and tone of academic writing. It uses appropriate language and tenses and is clear, concise, and balanced. So yeah, you can go into the next two slides. Yeah, the next slide. Yes, I've discussed about this new education policy 2022, where critical thinking is one of the main component in the terms of reduction in curriculum. And the next slide. And in terms of key principles also, you can find that critical thinking and creativity is one of the goals and principles of the new education policy. Next slide, please. In terms of transforming and pedagogical structure, you can also find that in the secondary stage, greater critical thinking is very much emphasized, apart from multidisciplinary study, flexibility, and the options or the choice of subjects to students. And if you look into the new economic policy, new education policy document as a whole for higher education, there is a goal of holistic development of learners. You can go to the next slide, please. So the new education policy states that the key overall thrust of curriculum and pedagogy reform across all stages will be to move the education system towards real understanding and learning of how to learn. So this is very important, and away from the culture of rote learning as it is present today. The goal will be to create holistic and well-rounded individuals equipped with key 21st century skills. And if you look into what are the 21st century skills, you would find that critical thinking is one of the most important skills in this century, apart from other communication skills, creativity, problem solving, perseverance, collaboration, information literacy, technology skills, and digital literacy. So the NEP has a focus on higher education institutions to have a strong department with adequate expertise and design programs in Indian languages, comparative literature, and especially creative writing. So creative writing has become one of the most important component of NEP in terms of higher educational institutions. And if you look into the NEP and which would be implemented from this year by DU and other universities, you could find that in undergraduate programs, there are different multiple exit options. We are going to introduce the 4-year undergraduate degree courses. And then in the first year, you can exit and get a certificate. And in the second year, you would be getting a diploma certificate. And on the third year, you would be getting a full degree. However, on the fourth year, if you continue for 4 years, then you would be having a research component degree. And from that degree, you are eligible to, with certain grade points, you are eligible for direct PhD entry. So that's what the NEP 2020 aims for, which DU and other universities would be introducing from this year. So look into the vision of the NEP 2020 again. It talks about moving towards a more multidisciplinary undergraduate education, revamping curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and student support for enhanced student experiences. So in this revamped curriculum, you would find that you could some science courses also, some basic science courses. For instance, I was teaching in the presidency where students from sciences can opt certain political science, history, and other options courses. For instance, I was teaching Indian Constitution. So many from the sciences, economics, physical and chemical sciences, they opted for Indian constitutions. They were interested, and I used to have about 80 to 90 students opting for that, courses. So likewise, in most of the universities and colleges now, there will be a revamping of curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and this assessment would be like different from the kind of exam-centric, undergraduate courses that we have now. It will be more like you have assignments in terms of term papers, you have presentations, you will have different modes of assessment. So it also visions about the establishment of a national research foundation to fund outstanding peer-reviewed research and to actively seed research in universities and colleges. So we have briefly, surveyed about the NEP 2020, and what we find is that there is a constant reminding or constant emphasis on critical thinking. So what is this critical thinking? You can find that critical thinking, it has become a buzzword in academic and educational circles today, and educators have become interested in teaching thinking skills in contrast to the teaching information and content. So what we see in the past is that most teaching has been on contents, but today teachers are more interested on teaching how to think. So this skill called critical thinking skills, or sometimes called critical creative thinking skills, become very important. For details about what is critical thinking and others, today we will not be able to discuss. You can read Alec Fisher's Critical Thinking, an Introduction, which is published by Cambridge University Press. And you can find the ebook easily, and you know where to find it, right? So now we are going to look into why quality papers, why academic quality papers are so important today for the education sector in India. Today, recently, you would have heard about Cochrane Simons, or popularly known as QS, released the subject ranking of colleges and universities in the world. And in that, you would find that Delhi University has development studies as one of the base departments in the world. And in social sciences or humanities and social sciences, JNU has been marked as one of the best institute in the country. So how do they measure this? How do they measure departments? How do they measure universities for such rankings? Because today rankings are very important. Any foreigner or any one who would like to have higher studies would see the rankings of universities. So rankings are based on certain parameters. You would find that in recent rankings of universities around the world, citation of faculty is taken as one of the important deciding parameters. You have the QS World Rankings, you have the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, you have the Shanghai Ranking Consultancy Extra. And in India, we have an IRF, right, which has been in place for the last 4 or 5 years. So how do they determine universities and colleges or even subject rankings? There are a methodology which are adopted by these companies and institutions. For instance, the methodology of Cochrane Simons World Rankings is based on citations per faculty, which has 20% of the points, and academic peer review, which is also known as reputation, that is 40%. Faculty student ratio has 20% of the points, employer reputation, internal student staff ratio. So these are the parameters that QS take, for instance, in the ranking universities. Or the Times Higher Education, they have citations research influence 32.5%. And this research has become one of the main criteria for determining the quality of or the ranking of universities. And in India, as I told you, we have the National Institutional Ranking Framework, and one of the parameters is research and professional practice, which is composed of combined metric for quality of publications, patents filed by researchers and faculty members. And in recent years, you would find that the prospect of employment and promotion of early career researchers are determined by the quality of paper published. For instance, last month, University Grants Commission of India has come out with a file called Institutional Development Plan, where universities and colleges would, try to achieve certain goals. And in that, there is a provision for fast-track promotion of teachers, faculties, for higher impact research work. So if you have high impact research work or teaching influence, you can have a fast track promotion also when you become a teacher. So how do we determine the quality of papers? There are many factors that determine the quality of papers. The text of scientific papers should be precise, impersonal, and objective. For instance, Smith in 1998 article, he said, good scientific writing is characterized by objectivity. This means that a paper must present a balanced discussion of a range of views. Moreover, value judgment, which involve moral beliefs of what is right or wrong, must be avoided. The use of personal nouns is unnecessary and can lead to biases or unsupported assumptions. In scientific papers, therefore, personal pronouns should not be used. When you used to write a paper, unless you attribute an option to someone else, it is understood to be your own. Phrases such as "in my opinion" or "I think, therefore" are superfluous and a waste of words. For the same reason, the plural pronouns "we are" or are not used. So this is what Smith suggested about how a research paper should be written. And in terms of language, for instance, the language of the paper should be simple and readable. That is what we wanted, or every reader wanted. The results showed that the famous articles were significantly easier to read than their controls. For instance, you should avoid jargons. Language that became pretentious and opaque has to be avoided. So if you look into many of the political sciences today in the West, for instance, Will Kimlicka, Canadian political philosopher, or Harvard professor Francis Fukuyama, or Yale professor James Scott, their language is simple, to the point, and easily readable. So in academic writings, we have to avoid jargon as much as possible unless it is very much necessary. And the other thing to avoid is overstatement, which discuss on non-significant finding as though they are statistically significant. And we should also avoid distortions. Selective presentation of findings from previous research and in the current research has to be avoided. And you would heard about many accusations of Indian and other writers where they are accused of plagiarizing certain works of others. So we have to be very careful about this question of distortions or presenting other findings. Some other thoughts and research finding has to be presented or acknowledged carefully. In terms of organization of a paper, a research paper or any academic writing has to be very much well organized in advance, so that there are evidently distinctive parts. For instance, any research article have a standard structure to facilitate communication, which is basically known as IMRAT, the introduction, methodology, result, analysis, and discussion. So these are very important. You'd have to first introduce the paper or the topic you are discussing, and there has to be a methods or theoretical framework. For instance, if you are submitting any paper in a journal called Contemporary South Asia, which is published by Taylor and Francis, they would ask you how you this is a research paper, and how do you obtain that conclusion or findings. They will be asking. So a method would be necessary to submit an article to that journal. So the method you employ to research a certain topic has to be clearly stated in an academic writing. And as we all know, the result or conclusion and discussion has to be clearly stated in the research paper. These are the proper format of organizing a paper. So there has to be introduction, there has to be a method adopted to be stated clearly, there has to be a body of discussion, and there should be a clear discussion on results and conclusions. So before that, the paper also needs a title, an abstract, and a keyword, which are not required earlier. For instance, if you read any EPW article, you will not find keywords, but EPW has also now required keywords today, so that the search in a search database, they would be easier to find. So any articles or all articles begin with a title. The title is designed to stimulate the reader's interest. So we have to think the title of an article properly before doing any other things. If the title is not clear, then it will distract the readers, or maybe it may dissuade the readers from reading that particular paper. And any academic writing or research paper must include an abstract. The abstract summarizes the content of the whole paper. And as I've said, it should include several keywords, about half a dozen keywords, which are sometimes called descriptors, together with the title and abstract. And in this digital age, such keywords, facilitate computer-based search and retrieval. So keywords has become in the computer age or in the internet age very important for people who would search in Google Scholar, Scopus, or any other such database like IPSCO and others. So all these three features describe an article's content in varying degrees of details and abstractions. And if you look into even paywall articles, for instance, today, many of the reputed journal articles are paywall. Your college or university has to subscribe for it, not to have the full-length paper. But however, these commercial publishers, they also know the trick. They make a title, the abstract, and the keywords available to all people in such databases. Or some publishers even go to the extent of making the bibliography or the references available to public. But however, the main content, the PDF of the content, is restricted to subscribers. So the title, the abstract keywords, and later on a properly referenced, a bibliography is very important for a good paper. So let's discuss about why a good title is important. A good title should attract and inform the readers, and it should be accurate. It needs to stand out in some way or the other. thousands of titles that compete for the reader's attention, but it also needs to tell the reader what the paper is about. So today you have every year you have thousands of millions of articles published in the world, and even people on certain working on certain topics like electoral integrity or elections or democracy. There are thousands of articles produced every year. But why should your article stand out? Why should it attract readers to read your article? So all those depends upon your title as well as abstract. So a good title attracts the readers, and your article stands out from thousands of other articles because of the title and the abstract you are formulating it. And furthermore, as the success of many computer-based searches depends upon the title, it is important to include in it some keywords relating to the topic of the paper. If I'm working on democracy, then at least the title of the paper should include democracy somewhere in the heading. And one scholar, Harry Cosby, who published a work on titles, there is a book just to study the titles of books. And in that paper and in that work, Cosby said that I have long believed that the subtle law process of finding an appropriate title stimulates creativity, unity, and significance. The writer starts out with a working title, writes a few pages, and then pauses to tinker with the title to make it fit what he has written. This helps him to go back to writing with a sharper focus on what he is really trying to say. These back and forth processes continues. If a good title emerges, the writer has evidence that he or she is developing a significant message expressed in a unified manner. If no title is possible, something is wrong. So that's the extent of how Harry Cosby emphasizes uh, uh, on formulating a good title before anything else. So what is a good title? The fewest possible words that adequately describe the content of the paper is called a title. And it has to be easily identified in terms of references, search engine, OPEC, or any other database that search a certain paper or work. So today you would have heard about many indexing and abstracting, institutions. For instance, in India we have NASDAQ. You can share the next slide, please. In India, there is a NASDAQ, which is a branch of ICSSR. So this NASDAQ annually created certain database. For instance, they publish ICSSR Journal of Abstracts and Review. Sociology and anthropology, they have a section on political science. They have a section on geography, economics, and psychology. So likewise, any articles or any scientific research published in journals and others would be abstracted by NASDAQ. All the titles, abstracts, keywords would be published by NASDAQ in a kind of bibliographical journal. So apart from NASDAQ in India, we have so many other companies today. We have International Political Science Abstract. So this International Political Science Abstract Journal, it abstracted so many journals, especially on political science. So for instance, in 2012, I published an article about political integration in Northeast India, which was published by Strategic Analysis, a journal of IDSA in New Delhi. So that article, abstract, and title were indexed in this International Political Science Abstract. So that is why a good title is very important for people to find your article and to convince them to read and even cite them. Citation today has become very important. There are citation wars, there are citation fraud, and others which maybe in other kind of interaction we can discuss. But today, many of the universities are dependent upon the publication as well as citation of their papers, and that pushes the reputation and ranking of the universities. So in order your article to be read and cited, a good title, as I've said, is very important. So the title of a paper is not a sentence. It is a label that you have to understand. You have to think carefully, and you have to label it. So it should not be a sentence that you normally write in a paper. So the title of a paper is a label accompanying the paper itself. It is not a sentence, and that is why it should be simple, more simple than the sentence. The meaning and order of words become important for potential reader who sees the table of contents in a journal or a search engine. The title of the paper should not contain abbreviation, jargon, and any other, words that may distract the reader. So you would find that there are many editors who are opposed to the main title. For instance, hanging titles. Of course, I practice many hanging titles. For instance, the article which I talk about, political integration of Northeast India, a historical analysis. So there's a hanging title, there is subtitle. Many editors, they don't want a hanging title. So if you could make it very simple, then many editors and other possible publishers would like it. For instance, in my latest book chapter, which I wrote for International Handbook of Disaster Research, I try to avoid those hanging titles or the subtitles. So I name it, indigenous knowledge and early warning systems. So I try to eliminate this hanging titles. So a journal is not only about about the titles and abstracts. It's also about collaboration. Today, you would find that in terms of ranking, in terms of research, there is a much emphasis on collaborating with another college or university, or more likely, faculty with another university from different countries. So collaboration has become very much important, and such collaboration produces more, advanced research. So O'Connell states that if you have co-authors, the problem about authorship can range from trivial to catastrophic. So if two college students are writing a term paper to get together for a presentation in certain conferences, then you have to carefully think about how to arrange the authors also. Colleagues can become bitter enemies on the disagreement of whose names should appear first or in what order. So what is the right order? There's no accepted definition or convention of who should come first to as the first author, the second author, the third author. There are some people who say that it should be based on alphabetical order. But to my opinion, he or she who did most of the research work, for instance, should be the first author. Take for instance, a college or university student research scholar is working on certain areas, and he's trying to or she's trying to produce a research paper together with a supervisor. So if the students produces most of the work, then the first author should, despite being a student, should go to the researcher rather than the professor. Likewise, there can be a situation where two political scientists work together from different universities. They did equal work on a research paper, and in the whoever comes first doesn't matter, but they can declare that both the authors work or contribute equally for this research paper. They can declare despite who comes first or second. So preparing an abstract is also very important. As we have briefly talked about it, abstract is a summary of information in a paper or document. For instance, American National Standard Institute, it said that a well-prepared abstract enables the reader to identify the basic content and quickly and accurately to determine its relevance to his, her interest or purpose, and then to decide whether they want to listen the presentation in entirety. So abstract should state the principal objectives, the scope of the investigation, what and why. So basically what we do in abstract is to describe briefly the methodology employed or the approach to the problem or topic, or even the summarization of the results. Yeah, you have to talk about or write in brief about the results and findings also. So you in abstract also you may find the principal conclusions in a few sentences. Okay, so while writing an abstract, there are generally prescribed do's and don'ts, and if you are preparing for writing a dissertation or a paper that you could submit somewhere else as as a scientific paper, then you should know that in research paper there is an abstract which normally ranges from 150 to 200 words or to the maximum 300 words. Abstract is generally the first part of the manuscript. Care must be taken to include the findings, new contributions to knowledge, so that it attracts readers. Similarly, reviewers may be close to the final judgment of your paper after reading the abstract. And it do happen to me also. I have reviewed maybe a dozens or maybe about 40, 50 papers till now in the scientific journals. And many a times by looking into the abstract, you already know the possible review that you would conclude with, whether to accept, whether to reject, or whether to accept with major revision. Or there are different categories of reviewers' response to papers, and many of these response are already predetermined. For instance, in the abstract. So abstract is very important, and it should be clearly written, and it should be simple, and it should not be it should not give informations or conclusions that are not in the paper or presentations. So you must be very careful. For instance, if your paper is submitted for a peer-reviewed journal, you are stating certain things, certain exciting things in the abstract, but you never discuss in the paper. Then that could be the single reason why your paper could be rejected also. It should contain no bibliographic information, figures, or references. In abstract, we omit abbreviation and acronyms. Often do I find in the certain papers that, for instance, United Nations, you don't need to say or abbreviate United Nations. Everybody knows. But however, there are many other organizations, institutions that are not generally recognized all over the world. So those, if you are referring to that, try not to use abbreviations unless it is well known around the world. So we have to omit abbreviations and acronyms in abstracts. So how to write an introduction? The first part of any paper is introduction. So the purpose of introduction is to supply sufficient background information to allow the reader to understand and evaluate the results of the study without reading other previous publications. So as far as possible in the introduction, you should introduce certain concepts if you are trying to apply, or you could do certain literature review, right? In order that you have or you could introduce the gap of the literature by reviewing other literatures. So that is the purpose of the introduction, to introduce the readers to that topic and introduce the gap, critically evaluate the previous research papers and other works. And it should contain rationale of the study with brief purpose in writing of the paper. Uh, Basically, introduction should present, with all possible clarity, the nature and scope of the problem to be investigated. It should review the pertinent literatures to orient the readers, which I have already discussed with you. And it should state the method of the investigation. If deemed necessary, the reasons for the choice of a particular method should be stated. It should state the principal results of the investigations. And it should state the principal conclusions suggested by the results. We should not keep, it is suggested that we should not keep the reader in suspense. So that's some of the basic ideas of how to write an introduction. And now we can go to the methodology. As I have discussed with you earlier on a certain journal, for instance, Contemporary South Asia, which will not process any paper unless you write a methodology, right? Unless you clearly write in the paper, in the body of the paper that you have used this method. They will not process any paper. So you have to be very careful if you are submitting certain papers to a certain journal. You should read carefully the instructions to authors. What are the minimum words required? Do it requires methodology? Do it requires discussion? So you have to clearly look into the instruction for authors before submitting. And as I told you, stating the methodology is very convincing to reviewers and readers, so that you have employed a certain methodology that's relevant to arriving a certain conclusion. You can go to the next slide, please. So this method section should be brief and succinct. When the method used are well known and standardized, it is very easy for readers and other researchers also to look into your read into your paper with confidence. So it should, when your methodology is quite lengthy, there can be a reason. For instance, there are certain researches which requires certain well-known methodologies. It can be briefly stated in the methodology. But however, there are, there can be a situation where the methodological part, describing your methodology, could be very lengthy. That happens when the method used are new or different, and as a result, it requires careful elaboration. There is a methodology in social science research that is called grounded theory. Grounded theory is a methodology deployed in social sciences, even in political sciences, where you are not sure about what you will be researching, and as such, you don't go to the field with a methodology. You will be informed with certain concepts, but you go to the field without any information on the ground, data. So you go there, you don't list a methodology. You use this grounded theory, and you collect the data and come up with a certain concepts, findings, or later on you can describe how you obtain that data. So in such methods which deploy grounded theory, the methodology could be quite lengthy. So that is another exceptional cases. So we go to the discussion. The discussion section of any academic writing or research paper are difficult to write because their aim is to discuss and comment on the findings rather than to report them, right? Discussion is very different from the conclusion also. For instance, Day and Gastel suggested that journal editors reject many papers because of their weak discussions. They recommended that discussions should end with a short summary regarding the signification of the work, which they claim is not always adequately considered. So, if you don't properly discuss the conclusions and the other findings, your paper could be rejected based on that discussion also. And in 1999, Woods recommended that writers should note about what it might be useful to include in the discussion as ideas occur to them when they are writing other sections. And that it might be wise to set aside a day or two to tackle this section of the paper. So, when you are writing a research paper or when you are in any academic writing, we normally prescribe that after the whole paper or research paper is written, you take an off. You don't submit it to the journal or any other publication. You keep that paper lying there for 1 week. And after 1 week, you revisit them again after you have engaged your mind on other thoughts other than the paper. So that could, have you in reorienting your mind and thought, and you could find certain mistakes, certain, error in the sentences and other after a week or two. So the structure of the discussions, like introduction, have a typical structure. Uh, Firstly, the structure of discussion has to restate the findings and accomplishment, evaluate how the results fit in the previous findings, whether they contradict, whether they qualify, agree, or go beyond them. So you have to evaluate, in many other researches, for instance, in psychology and sociology and others, they have hypotheses. They formulate a hypothesis before writing a paper or proposing a research, and they test those hypotheses. So in this discussion, such hypotheses, such contradictions, whether it qualify, agree, or go beyond them, has to be stated carefully in the discussion. And the structure of the discussion is such that you also need to talk about the potential limitations of the study. And you also need to offer an interpretation or explanation of these results and word of counterclaims. And lastly, state the implications and recommendations for further research. In India, many of us are not engaged in talking about the implications and further recommends for research. Your research doesn't mean that everything is well researched and it's over. The research itself can create certain further research in future. So in the structure of discussion, there is an emphasis laid on recommendation, writing a recommendation for further research. Okay, we will come to acknowledgement. So while writing a paper, while writing or doing a research, there are many people involved in a proper research. For instance, you go to the field, you interview certain personalities. For those who are having interest in IR, for instance, one fine day, you will be interviewing the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, or the Foreign Minister. And while trying to make an appointment to them, there are many people who would be, guiding you, to helping you to get such appointment. You should acknowledge such kind of people who are helping in writing a book or even in the research papers. Such acknowledgements are very necessary. There can be instance like another renowned person who is close to you might be requested for reviewing the article, right? To improve the further improvement of the paper, you would be asking someone to critically review the paper. And in the announcement you need to acknowledge such people. So if you look into academic papers and books, mostly they contains acknowledgements to various resources of help received during the preparation. And it is courteous to thank sources of financial support and colleagues and referees for their help in improving the article. And especially financial, help. For instance, you may get from ICSSR as a research fund, as a research project. You may receive it from other sources like CSIR or UGC. You need to, clearly acknowledge, uh, the fundings, whether it may be external or internal. So, for instance, in certain scientific papers, the instruments, technical and other facilities that you are using needs to be properly acknowledged. And then the conceptual, the source of inspiration, the idea, the critical insight and other has to be also put in the acknowledgement. And others are like editorial, moral, and other kind of support that you get from editorials, boards, and from your family members could be recognized in the acknowledgement during the preparation of the work. And references, references are also very important. And if you are submitting a paper without a proper referencing style, then it could be rejected. And I will share one instances how a certain Indian journal has been removed from the prestigious Scopus list. I will not mention that journal, but it is a journal on mental health. So during the pandemic, they published a lot of papers, on COVID, and I noticed that one of the papers uh, cited me. But however, when I look into the paper, since it's open access, I find that the referencing was so bad. They don't even write the title of my paper, the publication, destination or the name of the journal properly. Uh, Forget about the piece range and other details of the journal's publication. So I was so upset seeing that, because that will never come out in any citation database. So I was contemplating that how such a properly unreviewed journals could be indexed in Scopus. And I look into Scopus database, and I find that uh, that month itself, Scopus has declared that we will stop indexing of this journal. So references are also very important, for this indexing databases. And a certain journal, as I have discussed, could be rejected for such, carelessness in referencing system. So many styles of referencings have been, developed all over the years in the world, and almost every reputed journal has their own referencing style. And around the world, some of the most accepted referencing styles are like American Psychological Association, or commonly known as APA referencing style. This is main predominantly used in social sciences. And in the humanities and art, liberal arts, for instance, they use MLA, or the more modern language association style sheet. And there are other style sheets like Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver. In India, for instance, earlier you also have the Indian legal system of referencing, but nowadays, because of the prominence of these internationally accepted referencing systems, they are hardly recognized today. But in India also we have such style sheets earlier. So referencing system, or being careful about how you reference it properly, is also important in academic writing. And apart from referencing, you have footnotes and endnotes. What are footnotes and endnotes? The differences are that sometimes more sensitive than references are needed, often containing more exposition or explaining certain sentences more, which you cannot keep in the proper text. So those you reference them, or you footnote them or endnote them, and explain or elaborate them in the endnote. And they usually appear as their name suggests at the foot of the page. However, it is also common to find such notes at the end of the chapter. Earlier, we use footnotes rather than endnotes, and it is easier to read because it is found in the page itself, or even a group chapter by chapter at the end of the book. So there are two common assertions to this. The footnote seems irresistible, and that they can be thus be distraction to the reader. And on the other hand, it is difficult sometimes to find your place back in the main text to continue reading when you have moved away to read the footnote. So the endnotes particularly are placed at the end of the book or at the end of the chapter. So while trying to read the endnote, you go back to the end of the chapter and you come back. And in doing that, you lose your concentration on the main text. So how in this way, I prefer footnotes rather than flipping the page or to the end of the book and coming back. The footnotes provide you readily available notes at the end of the chapter. So there are advantages as well as disadvantages into this. So basically, these are the structure of the any academic paper that you write, and all these parts are very important in writing an academic paper. So without a proper title, you can distract readers. Without a properly written abstract, like the title, it can also distract potential readers. So in everywhere, you have to be very careful. You think carefully right from the title to the abstract, and even the so-called keywords. We are living today in the age of internet and computer. These keywords, as we have described, are the words that will catch any potential reader while searching Google Scholar or IPSCO or Process or any other indexing databases. So we have to be careful even with the keywords. You have to provide the right word to the keywords column. And there comes the introduction. Introduction is very important so that you can review the literature of in that area and pointed out the gap. And you can further go to the methods you employ in doing that research. Otherwise, as we have discussed, without proper methodology, any scientific paper could be adopted. And you have the main body of the paper, and at the end you have discussion as well as conclusion. And last but not the least, you have references and endnotes as well as footnotes. So all these together, comprises a scientific paper, which in academic institutions like colleges and universities, we are very careful about it. And without all these, components and being carefully, writing and placing them in the proper order, your paper, at the outset could be rejected by any evaluation. For instance, it may be published in a college, journal, or or any other reputed, academic journals, or as a book chapter in certain, collected essays. These, components will determine your quality of the paper. I don't know how long I have taken. Maybe it must be more than 1 hour now. So perhaps I would end and we can discuss if you have any doubt regarding this. Yeah. Back to Dr. Waipe and Jayati. Yeah, we can hear you. I'm the only one, it seems like.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes. Now.
All right, sir. So we have few questions from the audience. So can you suggest some ways of organizing literature review? This is, yeah.
Yes.
Should I repeat the question, sir? If you
Yes,
can suggest some ways of organizing literature review.
These are the things taught in research methodology courses. That definitely, I till now in undergraduate courses, we don't have research methodology and others, taught in the undergraduate courses. But now, with the coming of an EP 2020, definitely even in undergraduate courses, in the 4th year, you will be learning methodologies also. Normally, during our time, even in postgraduate courses, we were not compelled to learn research methodologies. It's only in the PhD level, MPhil PhD level, that we learn what is literature review, what is methodology, what is this and that. But now on, as there is a change, a sweeping change in the educational system. So literature of review depends upon what you review, right? How do you review literature? That is, it depends upon the subject or the topic of that you are trying to research. So, for instance, if you are trying to review a literature on democracy, for instance, right? You have to review, look books for, in order to understand democracy, you first need to look into the literature on certain concepts of democracy, how it originated, right? From the Greeks, from from ancient till modern, you need to look into the literature. But nowadays there are so many books written on whatever you need. For instance, there are recently published books on democracy which look into the origins and different concepts of democracy. So you have to organize based on what you are looking for, rather than asking how to organize review of literature. It mainly depends on what you are looking for. So review of literature is a huge subject. There are different skills to this. I think it would not be sufficient to discuss the detail of how to review a literature. One whole lecture would be, just not quite enough even to talk about how to review literature. So in our MPhil course, MPhil PhD course, there is a topic on review of literature, and review of literature is one of the main component of how to start research. Unless you review a literature first, then you cannot find out what are the gaps in the literature, right? So to find out the gaps, you have to you have to review the literature first. And I think, I don't know whether I can suggest you, but if you're really interested in this, there is a very good book, on this, published by SACE Publications, How to Review a Literature. There is a step-and-step guide for undergraduate as well as postgraduate students to how to do review of literature. So perhaps I can definitely share with you the of course there are hundreds of books that talks about review of literature, but for a starter, especially in the undergraduate level, that book definitely would help you in the in reviewing the books more comprehensively. Yeah. Can I tell you about the book? I will just in the chat section, for instance. So this book would be very helpful to all of you. The Literature Review, a step-by-step guide for students by Diana Ridley. You can easily download in some of the websites. So this book by SACE Publication would be definitely helpful in guiding you how to do a review of literature. Yeah, there is a question, yeah, by Department of, yeah, I can definitely share this PPT in my academia account. Of course, after this discussion, I will upload in my academia account. Definitely, I will share with all of you, right? Yeah, if you have any question, then we can continue with the next question.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So there's a question that is that how do we identify that there's a thin line between paraphrasing and plagiarism, right? So how do we identify that?
How do you identify and
Paraphrasing. Paraphrasing and plagiarism.
actually, even if you paraphrase, you have to acknowledge. So you are just paraphrasing someone's idea doesn't mean that you are plagiarizing the idea. The idea is there, so you have to acknowledge it. If you are certainly copying a certain sentence, then you have to reference them. So, just paraphrasing doesn't mean that you escape from you escape from plagiarism. It's just that you are trying to make it simple to the reader, or maybe you are modifying the sentence of a certain scholar to suit your argument. So the only way is to reference them or cite them. So paraphrasing is not not an escape from plagiarism. Okay, it's a kind of a technique of like sweetening your argument through some certain modification of another researcher's work. So there's no escape. You have to acknowledge the idea of another person unless it is your original thinking, original work. So that's what I can advise you.
All right. Thank you, sir. And the third question is, sir, how much time would you advise someone to take while writing their first paper? And does it get faster at like with time and experience?
It depends. For instance, if I have interest in writing a totally new topic, which I have not dealt so far, but I am interested in writing certain topics, then it will take a lot of time for me to think about it, and even to think about it, identifying the gaps in the literature. I have to study the literature first. Unless I review the literature, then how will I know that a certain idea or a certain field has not been researched? You may have today certain thought in my mind. Just I will share with you one interesting incident which occurred to me last year, right? Uh, oh, it's not even last year; it's this year. This year, in February and March, we have elections in Manipur, right? So in that election, there are certain things happening. It's funny, but for instance, I was talking about, I was thinking about certain practices uh, mm, in Manipur that I was thinking that I was trying to make a certain new votes for certain phenomena. After thinking that phenomena, I type in the internet, and then I find that it's already in existence and used in the Western society. So, that's it. So even you may think today that you are trying to invent certain concepts or ideas, but you have to search the internet, search the literature, whether that has been in existence or that could be a new one. So that's the main reason why every ideas, every concepts, or every thinking has to be thoroughly reviewed. You have to search the literature, read the literature, then you can come to the conclusion that, oh, this is a new concept, this is an idea, it has not been in practice, or this is done for the first time. Then you can claim the ownership or originality of that thought only. So that's why literature review is very important.
All right, thank you, sir. And we have a final question. Would you suggest that we should learn a programming language in order to quantitatively support our research?
You know, there are in social science research there are two main classifications. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative. If somebody is definitely going for quantitative, then you really need to train yourself in certain statistical tools like SPSS and others. Otherwise, it's basic data that you will be presenting in your research cannot be analyzed without such knowledge. So certain statistical tools like Excel or SPSS, you have to be trained in that first. You need to analyze, or you need to know it very carefully first if you are pursuing a kind of quantitative research. But for qualitative research, which many of us are engaged with, you really don't have to be an expert on that. Of course, it's always good to know certain tools. But for instance, I learned all those tools 12 years ago. About 15 years ago, I learned all those tools. But now I have forgotten everything because I mainly engage in qualitative research. But I would urge you to be trained in all those if you are, for instance, researching on elections, right? Elections are sometimes, most of the times, are quantitative in nature. How do you predict elections? How do you evaluate elections? So all these things are tabulated. All these things are quantitatively analyzed. So having a training and knowledge about statistical tools and softwares is very essential for quantitative research. Here we have in the economics and other departments who normally are involved in quantitative analysis. So sometimes they give trainings to economics or any other related fields. A special training to students who would like to be trained in those tools. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. These were the questions from the audience side. Indeed, that was an illuminating workshop session. I believe that we all have a lot to take away from it. Thank you, sir, for comparing such an edifying session. Now, to conclude, I would like to call upon Ms. Divinity Kothari, Event Executive, Political Science Student Association, to deliver the official vote of thanks. Over to you, Divinity.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Divinity, you are on.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Okay, so it's an honor for me to officially present the vote of thanks to each and everyone present today for making this event a huge success. Firstly, on behalf of the entire Political Science Department of Sri Venkateswara College, including the association members, faculty, as well as the students, I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Thongkholal Haokip for gracing us with his presence and for also providing us an insightful session on academic writing and publication. I would also like to thank respected Principal Ma'am, Dr. C. Sheila Reddy, and the Vice Principal Sir for bestowing upon us the wonderful opportunity of organizing this event. Also, a special thanks to our faculty members for guiding and supporting us throughout the event. Finally, thank you so much to our inquisitive audience for being so cooperative and participating in the event in such huge numbers. Thank you for being so patient throughout the event and sending a bunch of amazing questions. With that, we conclude the day 2 of Introspect 2022. Again, thank you everyone for your cooperation and support. Thank you so much for joining in. Yeah,
So with
over
this,
to you,
we thank you. Divinity. So with this, we come to the end of day 2 of Introspect, a confluence of quantum of ideas, celebrating the spirit of inquisitiveness and inquiry. I have a small request if each one of you can turn on your cameras for a quick screenshot. I think it'll be done by now.
Yes, done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Thongkholal Haokip, sir. Have a jovial day, everyone. Do not forget to participate in the upcoming competitions lined up for you on 15th. See you there. Thank you.